Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the first of 5 Research Compass Series events. My name is Tiffany Willoughby, Research Education Programs and Outreach Manager in the Office of Research. Joining me today is Emily Lacey, Associate Director in the Office of Sponsored Projects, and Cindy Sutton, Associate Director in the Office of Financial Operations. Emily Lacey has been with the University of Texas at Dallas for 10 years. Prior to UTD, she spent 5 years in the Central Research Office and 1 year in the Corporate and Foundation Relations Office at University of North Texas. Cindy Sutton has been at our university for 32 years. She spent her first 20 years in the Budget and Finance Office before joining the Post-Award Management team 11 years ago. Together, Emily and Cindy will introduce pre- and post-award, delving into the specific responsibilities of each. They will cover topics such as finding funding, submitting proposals, non-monetary agreements, and so much more. Emily, Cindy, welcome.
All right, so thank you, Tiffany. As Tiffany said, I'm Emily Lacey. I am the Associate Director for the Office of Sponsored Projects. And so we will talk about what all we are. So what is the mission of the Sponsored Projects Office? So Sponsored Programs Administration is the umbrella of pre- and post-award. The mission of Sponsored Programs Administration is to provide our faculty responsive, high-quality service. The Office of Sponsored Projects, which is the pre-award side, supports faculty and staff in obtaining and managing sponsored awards, as well as review and approval of proposals sent to all external sponsors. So my team is the pre-award team, and so we are going to help you all the way from finding funding through the actual submission and to the award, and even some post-award pieces. And so the quality of the customer service is the key. Our goal is to make it as easy as possible for you to submit proposals without having to worry about all the compliance and the administrative burden. We want you to be able to focus on the science. So that's what our goal is. So how can we help you achieve that? So the first thing is finding funding. We'll talk about this a little bit later in the next slide, but really finding the funding is the first step. So obviously you can't submit a proposal until you have a solicitation. And so we will look with you to try and find funding opportunities. And if you find any, you can communicate them with us as well. But that is the first step in the first phase that we're going through. We also have grant writing and proposal editing assistance. So this is provided by external consultants that we have that provide review and revision assistance to your drafts. And then we have an outside firm that is the Hanover Research Firm. And we have a contract with them where they'll provide review and revision assistance, but they will also help you find funding. They can help you find collaborations. And we also have a Grant Academy cohort with them where some select faculty will go through it's kind of like a grantsmanship course, if you will. And then they will also provide some training, as you'll see in the coming weeks when we have some of the how-to series. They're going to help us with that. They do require a 3-week turnaround. And so if you can get your draft of your science ready and it's 3 weeks prior to the deadline, we can definitely send it through and they'll provide a very comprehensive review and revision. They can sometimes even do a second round after you have responded to the comments that they have left in the first round. I do recommend that you strive for that, because as many times as you can get somebody to look at your proposal, the better off you're going to be. The same with peer reviewers, and find your mentors and your peer faculty and get them to review it, because the more people look at it, the more you can craft it to go with everybody and have everybody's opinion, and then you won't have a reviewer stick out. We help you develop budgets, and so we want to make sure that you have everything in your budget that you need to do the project. We also want to make sure that you're using the correct rates, whether it be your salary, your grad students, your postdocs, your undergrads, that they all have at least the minimum amount. We want to make sure that you have a fringe rate included for all of them. You have your indirect cost, and some of the things that people sometimes forget are their animal cost or the core facilities usage. We just want to make sure that everything in the budget is necessary and that you haven't forgotten anything. And we also want to make sure that you're within the parameters of the solicitation and the sponsor. We will review proposals. This is, of course, the most major one. We want to make sure that the proposals are compliant with all of the rules that we need to in order to get your proposal past that first level of compliance checkers. We don't ever want you to get in a situation where your amazing science hasn't made it to the people who will review that science, and instead it gets knocked out simply because, you know, you used a different margin or you used a different font size. That should never happen, and that's our goal. We actually have an 8-page checklist that we use when we review proposals. So that's 8 pages of things that we have to look for to make sure that nothing in your proposal will make the sponsor just reject it basically without even getting to the science piece. And so in order to do that, we have to have time, and that's the key. We do have a 4 business day deadline in the Office of Sponsor Projects, and that means all your proposals, all your documents, all your internal forms have to be in our office 4 business days prior to the deadline. And that's important because, as I said, we have the 8-page checklist. The less time you give us, the less time we can actually look at things. And so I know that you're still working on your science, and I respect that. I know that the science is your baby. We appreciate that, and we want you to have maximum amount of time for that. We want drafts though. So the boilerplate stuff like your budget, your biosketch, your current and pending, facilities, data management, all of that should be able to be finalized within the 4 business day rule. If you at least provide us drafts of the science, then you can continue working on the science until the end, but we do have to have a draft. There's been too many times to count that we have not received that draft, and then a faculty sends us the final proposal of their science like 3 hours before the deadline, and it's 4 pages too long. At that point, there's nothing really we can do. You can't scrap that many pages and readjust your entire science in order to make it fit. And that's just because we weren't aware of it at the beginning. So on the science piece, what we're looking at is to make sure that you are within the page limits, but also that you are hitting all the headers you're supposed to. You're addressing all the pieces that you need to, that you have all of the headers that they want, that you are writing the way that you're supposed to. You can't take an NIH proposal that is for that they're looking at your specific aims, and you can't mush that into the NSF philosophy of intellectual merit and broader impacts. If you don't use the right terminology, they won't reward you. So we want to make sure that all of that is being met and give you the greatest chance for success. The best piece of advice is to look at what in the solicitation, go to the reviewer section and see what the reviewers are supposed to be looking at. Just write to that. I mean, they're basically giving you the answers to it. You just have to write to it and make sure that it flows and make sure that it's easy. And then if the reviewers see that, hey, they followed this, that this is easy, then they'll overlook some other things that might be on the borderline. So the reviewing proposals is the main piece of what we do. And as long as you give us enough time, we will make sure that you get to the piece so that the science people can see your science. Once you submit the proposal, it will go, we are the ones who submit it because we have most of the login information. And so we'll submit your proposal. We'll work with you if there is a budget revision afterwards, or if you need to submit some just-in-time material, anything up to the award. Once the award comes in, we will work with you to negotiate that, whether it be a grant or a contract. We will do both. We'll also make sure that you meet all the compliance perspectives in case there are FAR clauses or anything. In conjunction with that, we will work with you on any non-monetary agreements that may accompany it or be separate, like a non-disclosure or an MOU or material transfer. Any of those we will handle as well. The only exception to that is if it's an industry. If it's direct industry funding, then our Office of Technology Commercialization will handle it, and they'll talk about that in their session. But other than that, everything will pretty much go through sponsor projects. And you don't have to remember the distinction. You can just contact us. We can be your one-stop shop, and we'll tell you either we'll move you in the right direction or we'll figure out the answer to your question and just let you know. So once the award comes in, we will negotiate it and we will sign it on behalf of the university. You as faculty are not authorized to sign on behalf of the university, so we have to. Then when the award is fully executed, we'll send it over to post-award for a cost center. And that's kind of the dividing line between OSP and OPM, but there is some things that will go across both of them. So if you still need sponsor contact or you need sponsor approval, that will be with us. So if you are transferring your award to a new organization, that would be sponsor projects. Some of you, we have already helped you with transferring your projects into the university. If you ever needed to go to the sponsor and ask for maybe a reduced effort, or if your COPI changed, or you need to move participant support costs, we could help you with that. We know a lot of people at the sponsoring agencies because we work with all of them. And so we already know what they look for and if they are going to answer us quickly or not. We also know what the sponsors look for in terms of the proposals. So as I said, when we're reviewing, we have this 8-page checklist. Sponsors have even more than that. They have a lot more rules and procedures and policies. But because we submit so much, we know which sponsors are focusing on which proposal, on which rules. So we can make sure that we hit the ones that they care about and we'll ignore the other ones so that we're not burdening you with ridiculous rules that aren't even applied. We'll only focus on the ones that you need to focus on. We are also the doorway to compliance. So as we're looking at all these documents, whether it be an RFP, a proposal, an agreement, all of those may contain pieces that need to go to the other departments on campus. So if we're looking at it and we see that there's chemicals, we'll reach out to the biosafety group. Or if you have human subjects, we'll get the IRB involved. What's coming up more and more these days is about data management and protecting your data and making sure that it's in a secure environment and there's different levels of security. So we will work with our compliance group as well as our information group to make sure that we have the environment set up for you to have your data. And the data management plan. Sometimes we're running into more export control things, so you might have to have a technology control plan. But all of this, we will reach out to the other groups and work with you. We're almost the middleman. We connect everybody and we all work at the same time and in conjunction so that while we're doing the negotiation, the other pieces are also happening. And that way it's a faster process so that when the award is executed, you're already ready to go. We already have all of those pieces in place and there's not a delay. So those are the basics of how we help you. Now we're going to get more into finding funding. So finding funding. The second bullet is really the main one, Pivot. So Pivot is the database that we use at UTD. If you are a UTD employee, you have a UTD account, you can use that to log into Pivot. Pivot is your one-stop shop. It has everything. It has foreign, it has federal, state, local, private, foundations, corporate, it has everything in it. And they are constantly scouring the web. So it's updated about 24 hours after something is updated on a website, it'll be updated in Pivot. So you can go to the individual websites and look up things, but I would suggest going to Pivot because while you're looking for one specific thing, you may run across some other things that are actually just as good and more opportunities for you. Grants.gov is where all the federal opportunities are. And so you can go there. I find it hard to navigate grants.gov when I'm searching for a funding opportunity. I've done searches where I look in grants.gov and I look in Pivot and I can't find anything in grants.gov, but I can in Pivot. And so I just find it much easier and it's more comprehensive. So I highly recommend it. You can include and exclude terms, so there's no limit to how you can search. It also has this wonderful functionality where you can track things. So if you say you stumbled across an opportunity that you had just missed the deadline by maybe 2 weeks, you can put a tracker on it and then it'll let you know when that opportunity becomes available again. You can also track opportunities that you're applying for and it'll tell you if there is any changes to the deadline, the eligibility, anything about the opportunity, it'll let you know. And that way you're not having to scour the website and figure out if anything has changed. It'll just automatically let you know. So I love that in the feature. If you need help with getting your account or learning how to use Pivot, we have a cheat sheet that I can send out and I can also help you. Beth Keithley in the graduate studies, she is also a lovely fan of Pivot. She likes it even more than I do. She can help you as well. And we actually just did a training on using Pivot, a demo that we recorded. And so that will be on our webpage shortly. The other way that we have to find funding is through the OR portal. So the OR portal is the Office of Research portal that we created specifically for Office of Research functionality. A lot of you will probably have already used it because you may have submitted a conflict of interest through it. That's one of the modules inside it is conflict of interest. There's also an IRB module this is where you would submit IRBs that are for class studies. The rest of the IRBs will go through Cayuse. And then we have the actual funding opportunities portal. And we created this for several reasons. The first was for limited submissions. So limited submissions are opportunities that are limited by the university, how many we submit as a university. It's not a limit as to how many you as an individual PI can submit, but us as a university. And so all the identified opportunities that I could find that are limited submissions are in the portal. And if you're interested in those, you would log into the portal, find the solicitation, and then you would submit a one-page letter of intent. And on that letter of intent, you would say who you are, who your team is, what your goals are, and how it would be amazing for the university. So once the internal deadline passes, which is generally about 6 weeks before the external deadline, I look and see who's applied. If we have less than the number of applicants, then everybody gets selected and you can go forward and submit your proposal. But if we have more than the number of people interested that can actually submit, then it goes to a review process by the deans, and it'll be the deans of the applicants who submitted an LOI. So they will rank it, and then the top ranked ones, that will be who is eligible to submit. So that's the limited submissions. There's also the seed grants are in the portal. So we have many opportunities for seed grants. Right now, there are none available simply because it's the beginning of the fiscal year and we're trying to determine how much funding we will have for these opportunities. We should know fairly quickly, and then we'll be able to open up those specific opportunities and let you know how many in each category. So it's the same similar process for the seed grants. You would log in, you will apply and submit your proposal. The only difference between these is that it goes to a peer review. So it doesn't go to just the deans, it goes to a peer review. And then they rank them. Sometimes we have an in-person panel, which now would be a virtual panel, and some is just through an online reviewer system. The selected ones would be the ones that we would award. The other thing that's in the portal is specific opportunities that are sent to us as the central office. So we as the central office are the main point of contact. And so we have some sponsors and some funders that send us targeted solicitations. And if it's broad enough, I'll send it out to the entire community through my PI listserv. But if it's not and it's more targeted, I don't want to blast it out and waste people's time. So I'll put it in the portal. I'll try and find somebody who fits the bill. But on the people that I may not know that is what you're interested in, this would be your opportunity to go to the portal and find it. This is another opportunity where it's important to talk to your specialist and build a connection with the OSP office so that we understand what you're doing. If we know more about your research and what you're interested in, then when these things come across, then that is our opportunity to be able to reach out to you if we know what you're interested in. Now, keep in mind, we're not scientists, so we may not understand all the specifics of your science, but if you give it to us in layman's terms, we can remember it and go with it. So that is the OR portal. Oh, I forgot. The main thing about the portal, we are going to be putting our Cert form in the portal. That will be going live very shortly. So the Cert form is the approval of the university for you to submit your proposal. And it has to be signed by yourself, your PIs, and your department heads, and the deans. And currently it's an Adobe form. So as you can tell, Adobe has problems. Sometimes if different people use different versions, one person might see regular 12-point font, another person sees 48-point font for some reason, and sometimes the form locks. And so we've been trying to figure out a way to put it in the portal, and we are there. We have it ready. It looks exactly like the Cert form, so it's not that different, but instead of electronic signatures, it's an electronic approval process. And that way you can put it into the portal, and we will help you work on the form. We will get it all situated, and then it will go through to all of the levels of approvals so that everybody can do it. Remember that this is the form that has to be submitted before you are able to for us to submit the proposal. We need this to be approved by everybody because this is what is authorizing us as sponsored projects to be able to submit the proposal on your behalf. All right, so now things to consider. So plan ahead and start early. I can't phrase this enough. It's important that you think ahead and almost already have drafts ready, have some ideas ready. You can't put a proposal together in a day. It's not going to work, and it's going to be obvious to the reviewers. So think ahead. There needs to be background studies. There needs to be preliminary data. There needs to be a plan for your science and also a backup plan of if this doesn't happen, I'm going to do this. That's what the reviewers are looking for. So it's very important to plan ahead. As soon as you know that you're going to submit a proposal or even thinking about it, let our office know. The easiest way would just be to send an email to our general email, osp@utdallas.edu. And I have 6 specialists who are all divided into 3 teams. We have an orange team, a yellow team, and a green team. And those teams are divided based on departments. And so you will be on one of those teams. If you send an email to the generic OSP email, one of those team members will reach out to you and let you know which specific one will be working on that proposal at that time. So as soon as you have an idea that you're submitting, that's the opportunity to reach out. And even if you decide not to submit, it's better that we have you in the queue and we know that you're thinking of submitting rather than hitting us up with only 4 business days and then saying, here's everything, and we didn't even know you were submitting. So it's more about building that relationship with our office. There is a 4 business day rule. So, I mean, you have to have everything to our office within those 4 business days. And that's very important that you follow so that we can make sure that we're hitting everything and that everyone is following the rules. We don't want to have to move the queue around in order to accommodate other people. We want everybody to follow the same rules and get the same amount of attention. The internal approvals, as I said, the Cert form has to be approved before we can actually submit. And just respect the deadlines and the timetable. It's very important that we're all on the same page and that we all know what's happening. And so the sooner you can let us know that you're submitting and get us the documents, the easier it is for us to help you and make sure that everything goes smoothly. Next is the resources. So our web page is not divided based on departments, but if you go under the researcher side and you click grants process, that's where you'll find OSP and OPM. And if you go to the resources one under the grants process, you'll find a wealth of information. And I love this web page because it has all of our stuff that faculty find interesting. So the very first link on that page is the funded proposal template library. And this is great because it's behind a firewall, so only UTD people can access it, but it's full proposals that people have submitted that have been awarded. Now, some stuff is redacted for personal information or identifier people who weren't or aren't UTD, but it's full proposals. So you can see how they organized it, what they said, what some of their keywords were, how they phrase things. All of that is vitally important. And sometimes it's just helpful to look at something that was awarded, and then you can kind of gives you motivation. So we have that. We also have sponsor forms, which is all a different variety of sponsor forms. Most of the time people want to know about bio sketches. They'll say, I know they want a bio sketch, but I don't know what's on it. Well, this will help you. It has the templates and it also has some samples on there, especially with this new world of foreign influence and what all you need to have on there. These are helpful documents to have. Also on the web page, we have specific pages broken out on this. Like we have a conflict of commitment page that will specifically tell you what you need to include and what you don't need to include in bio sketches. We also have checklists for various solicitations. Majority of solicitations we have a checklist for, and this is meant to help you, specifically you as the faculty. So what we do is we take the RFP and the solicitation and we barrel it down into just the important pieces. What is actually your responsibility? What do we need from you? And so it's especially helpful with DOE, Department of Energy, who has about 80 pages in every single solicitation. We mush that down into about 1 or 2 pages saying, here's your font size, here's your margins, here's your page count, and here are the documents we need and what needs to be included in each one. What are the requirements? And we can do those for any solicitation. So even if it's a new solicitation we never worked with, we can make a checklist for it. But that way there's no surprises at the end. You know exactly what we need, and it makes it run a lot smoother. The new faculty guide. I love my new faculty guide. Some of you may have actually already received it from me if you were transferring anything into the university. So the new faculty guide takes basically all of research and compiles it into a PDF. So it goes through all the different areas of research and what we do and answers the general questions. There's also an FAQ in there. There's a workflow process showing how it goes from a proposal to a cost center. There is an org chart for OSP, OPM, and finance showing you who is in those groups and which group is responsible for what. There is an information sheet so that if you needed to know, like, what is our DUNS number? What is our address? Who can sign things? What's our congressional district? All of that information is on that web page. And then there is specifically for a young investigators. There's a young investigator solicitation page. So it's all the identified young investigator RFPs that we found, the sponsor, and the general deadline. So it's not going to be specific deadlines, but it'll tell you like late fall or early September. It'll say ones like that. And that way it gives you an idea of some of the opportunities that are out there. And then attend trainings and events. Our outreach group is phenomenal. I mean, we do tons and tons of events. Just go to all of them. They're all good. They're all well organized, and it's good information. I especially like the responsible conduct of research. And yes, it's required for grad students that have NSF or NIH funding, but I think it's good overall because it's faculty that are doing it. And so you get to hear the faculty perspective, and it's across the research spectrum. So it's across some things that you might not even think about as being specifically for research, but the faculty give their viewpoint on things so that if you run into a similar situation, you can think back, oh, well, that person did this, so I can do it like this as well. But I find that one to be really good. But any of our trainings are phenomenal. And if there's any questions that you have, just reach out to us, because if you have that question, somebody else does as well. And we could probably do a training on it. We can also do individual training if that's preferred, especially when it comes to like PeopleSoft. How do I use PeopleSoft? How do I find my cost center and things? That's more of an individual thing. But any training that you can think of, we'd be happy to do it. And as this is geared towards new faculty, as you come in, if you find anything is not working the way you think it should, or you have ideas for how things can work better or streamline, please let us know. We're always up for any new changes or any suggestions. And especially if you're having trouble getting anything done, just let us know and we'll do what we can to help that. At this point, I am going to ask Tiffany about questions, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Emily. You do have a few questions in the queue. The first question is, how do I find my grant specialist?
So the grant is on the website. It's kind of hard to find, I'll admit. It's on the main, if you look up sponsored projects, it's on there. If you just search grant specialist list, you'll have a better idea of how to find it. And it will list your 2 specialists for your particular department. And so you can send a general email to osp@utdallas.edu. That's probably the easiest way. And then your specialist will pick it up, or you can just choose one of the specialists that's on your team or both of them and send an email that way. And they will tell you which one of them will be handling it. The reason that we have the team structure is so that there are 2 people working on your project so that you're comfortable with both. That way, if someone is out of town, you aren't with a person that you've never worked with and you're a little bit uncomfortable, or maybe you just don't know their style. And so this way you are able to have 2 people that you trust and that know your science. So we have a better chance of them finding opportunities for you and maybe collaborations. And it just gives a better breadth of knowledge and experience for it.
Thank you, Emily. The next question in the queue is, how do I know what rates to use on my budget?
That will be your specialist who can help you with that. As far as indirect cost, our rate agreement right now is at 53%, but we are in the middle of negotiating the new one, which will be higher. We do not have a fringe benefit rate at UTD, which makes it a little confusing sometimes. So we do use a generic 20% fringe rate. If you have a postdoc or a senior faculty, it's probably better to go with 25%. But our budget template that is on the website has all these pre-populated so that if you just use what's in the template, you'll be pretty much covered. And as far as what to pay people, that is specific based on each school. And so your specialist will be able to help you with that.
At this time, there are 2 additional questions in the queue. The first one is, what is tenure credit and how is it different than indirect cost and return on Cert form?
All right, so on the Cert form, there are 2 sections, and the first one asks for tenure credit and the second asks for IDC distribution. So the IDC distribution as I said, we have a 53% IDC rate. What we do as a university is we give 10% back to the researchers. So of that 53%, 10% goes back, and that is into a research enhancement cost center. So if you hear those words, that's what that means. It's just your return of indirect costs. And on the Cert form, you determine how you want that 10% to be distributed. So it can be split evenly among all the investigators, or it can just go to the main PI. That is up to you. We don't have a say in that. That is up to how you as the project team decides to distribute that. Tenure credit is what goes on your tenure report. So our office provides a report to the tenure office, to the provost office, I'm sorry, showing all of your sponsor project work over the selected time period that they have requested. And so on the Cert form, you would state on the project team, the total has to be 100. You would divide it up based among the efforts of the investigators, and that's what you put on there. So if each investigator is doing the same amount of work and there's 2 investigators, you would just put 50-50. But if one investigator is doing 3 out of 4 aims, you would put 75 and 25. Again, this one is up to you guys as the project team to determine how you want to split it up. We will not get involved in that, but whatever goes on the Cert form is what shows up on the tenure report to the provost.
Good information shared, Emily. Next question in the queue is the new faculty guide available on the website?
It is. It is on the same page as the resources, as the funded proposal library. I found the fastest way to find things on the website is just to search. So if you search new faculty guide, it'll come up. It should be, I believe it's at the very bottom of the section that contains the funded proposal library. I believe it's in there. And you have to have box, and then it'll come up in a box thing, and you can download it from there.
We have 2 additional questions at this time. Number 1 is, can I hire a UTD colleague as a consultant on this grant? And what is research enhancement?
So no, you cannot hire any UTD faculty to be consultants. We can't consult for our own employer. They can be listed as a collaborator or an investigator or even a key person, but they can't be a consultant. They can't be paid as a consultant. If you are a UTD employee, you'll be paid through the payroll process. You can't be paid as an outsider. So it's important that you reference it correctly in the proposal and not say as a consultant, because this is your employer. So you cannot be consulting for your own employer. Research enhancement is the funds that are returned to you from IDC. So you get the PIs get 10% of the IDC return, and it goes into a research enhancement cost center. Now, this is geared towards new faculty, so you won't actually have a research enhancement cost center yet, but you will have one established as soon as there are funds to transfer into that. I'm probably betting that Cindy will go through that as well.
And last question. Oh, I apologize. There is one additional one lingering out there. So 2 questions again. First one is, what's the process if I receive a gift?
Gifts. Okay. So gifts it depends. The greatest answer in sponsored projects, it depends. If your gift is specifically for research, then the gift itself, the check, will probably be given to the development office because they are the ones that handle gifts. But the actual cost center creation will be done by your school. And so if you get a gift, you would need to work with your school fiscal officer to create a cost center and have the check deposited into that amount. Now, when it veers into our world is if it's a research gift. So if you have documentation, there has to be documentation from the sponsor saying that this gift is for research of some kind. It's to study, nanoparticles. It's to something related to research. It can't just be this is a gift. It has to be restricted. If I do have the documentation that accompanies it, you would select you want it to be a research gift, and then it comes through sponsored projects, and I will move it along the process just like we do when we get a regular award, and then it would be monitored by post-award, and we would follow the same closeout procedure and everything.
Thank you, Emily. Now, do you process foundation proposals too?
I did forget to mention that. Yes, we work very well with the Foundation Relations Group here on campus. They are in development, and so we if you have a foundation proposal, you can always contact us, and then we will work in tandem with the foundation relations group to determine whether their group can handle it and should handle it, or whether we should. It depends on the foundation. Some foundations they've already had experience with, they already have a relationship, and so yes, we definitely want to send it through them. Other ones, like technically National Science Foundation, but those would not go through the development office. It's more about what the requirements of the specific foundation are, because foundation and sponsored projects are different. Foundation is more about the personal relationship, the stewardship, and writing to that specific way, whereas federal is not necessarily about the relationship. And so if it will benefit from that, and if the foundation relations team has the bandwidth and the time, because they will help you write, they will help you edit, then yes, we will send it through them. But we work very closely with them, and we will figure out where it goes. Just contact us and we'll go from there.
Last question before we hand the gavel over to Cindy. How do I get my cost center, and how long does it take?
That's more of a Cindy question. What I will say, I will tell you the sponsored projects part of it. So once we get your award, if we want, or if it's a contract that's executed, or if it's just an email from NSF or NIH, at that point we will update the record in PeopleSoft, and then we send it over to post-award, and they have some magic that they do, and it usually takes, I would say, probably about a week. It can take as long as 2 weeks, but I would say a week would probably be average. And then they will send the cost center number back to us, and then Rebecca Everett in my office will put a packet together that shows you, it's a new award notification. It kind of gives you a run through of your award, if you will, and it has your cost center number on it, and you have to sign it and return it. And by signing it, you're saying you agree to the terms and conditions in it. And once we send that off, we will also circle back around to potentially have a kickoff meeting with you. And this is what we started to kind of help you with the particulars of your award. And so it'll be you, it'll be your admin, and it'll be me and the specialist and somebody from post-award as well. And we'll kind of just walk through the award to make sure you understand it, and we'll tell you when you have progress reports due, what you can do, what you can't do. We'll also go through your budget to make sure it's set up the way that you anticipated it being set up, because sometimes there's some differences between a sponsor budget and PeopleSoft, and we want to make sure that that's all squared away at the beginning so that you know exactly where your money is and what it is. So the short answer is about a week.
Thank you so much, Emily. There are no additional questions in the queue at this time, and so we appreciate your time, and I will request that Cindy Sutton cue up her slides, and welcome.
Good afternoon. As she said, I am Cindy Sutton. I am the Associate Director for Post-Award Management. And there's a team of us. There are 5 of us: Natasha Hinton, Allison Bratton, Lucia Barron, and Maria Morris. We're all working together. And if you can see our mission, it is to support faculty and staff in the managing of sponsored programs and assuring proper stewardship of funds. How do we do that? That is a good question. People want to know, what is it we do? We are here to ensure compliance with all federal and state rules. Our main role is to keep you out of the news in a bad way. We don't want anybody saying, look at the University of Texas at Dallas spending their funds nilly-willy, not following the proper rules. So our main role is to ensure this, that we're in compliance, that we're following all these regulations. And we do that mainly by reviewing every transaction that is related to a sponsored project, whether it be a budget revision, but mainly in the world of requisitions, EPARs to appoint people to the projects, the IDTs if we have to move expenses between different cost centers, journals that are generated by the university, whether that be for printing, mailing, the use of the different service centers and things like that. And then mainly is requisitions and travel reimbursements. I was once at a meeting where people said, you can't possibly review every transaction. Yes, we do. We review every transaction to make sure that it's allowable on that project, that it's within the period of performance for that project, and then it's allocable to that project. So we are here to help you. We want to make sure that we try to find a way to say yes to everything that you want to do. Sometimes the answer has to be no, that we can't do it, that something is wrong with it, or things like that. We're also here to help you rebudget your projects. The first thing that we do on that is we want to make sure that it's budgeted correctly to start with when we set up the award. After Emily's group sends it to us, we want to make sure that the budget is in the right lines. Like she mentioned, there are different categories sometimes for the federal sponsors or the state sponsors, especially from what PeopleSoft says. And we want to make sure that we try to get that money as closely as possible. Sometimes sponsors say, in fact, just say salaries. Well, we at UTD have several different categories of salaries, and we want to make sure that the money gets in the right spot to start with, so we don't have to try to get budget revisions done so EPARs can be processed at the last minute. And we want to try to make sure that we have that money in the right spot to start out. And so we work closely with the OSP group and then with the PI if we have questions to make sure that the money is budgeted correctly to start with. And then we also work with the fund balance information. If you're wondering how much money do I have exactly and you're confused maybe if the IDC has hit or hasn't hit or how that works, we're here to help you make sure that you understand how to read budget overview and to read the different screens in the PeopleSoft system. Or also we can always shoot you a quick email with your budget balance in a spreadsheet that's hopefully easy to understand, or that we can explain to you if you have questions about. We're also here to give the burn rate reports so that you know if you're spending on track, if you're spending too quickly, or if you're spending too slowly. Sometimes we might think that it's too slow, but in reality, it's a project that's going to be all in the summer and you got it in the fall, so we're waiting for the summer to come. That certainly makes sense, but we still send out that report just so you know that we're watching, that we're trying to help you, and that we want to make sure what's going on. And then we also work closely with the closeout process. Natasha works very closely with the Office of Finance to make sure everything is aligned in the right spot at the right time. Then, so that's our main role within research. And then so here are some of our resources. The award management tab at the very top. That's a very good one. It has a lot of different information for allowable cost, for cost sharing, cost transfers, period of performance, participant support, rebudgeting, all the different things that might happen within your award and how you're going to manage it. There's a lot of different very helpful resource links right there. And then there's also the tab for award closeouts. We work with, like I said, with the finance office on this, what's needed, what is required from the PI, what's required from post-award, and what's required also from the Office of Finance for reporting and different things like that. And then the last one is the roles and responsibilities. I really like this one because it does go through and tell what is the responsibility for each person involved. What is the PI responsible for? What does the departmental office have responsibility for? What is the dean's office and different things? If you don't have a designated person, your administrative assistants and your different staff like that. And then OSP's responsibilities, post-award responsibilities, and finance. We also work, we meet once a month with Office of Sponsored Projects so that we are all on the same page for different things. And then Sponsored Projects and Finance and OPM also meet so that we are talking about the different situations that are coming up, the different sponsors that we might have issues with, or different things like that, or just general knowledge so that we're all on the same page when we're trying to help you. We also meet with the Office of the Provost. This is so that when we're trying to disseminate information that we're all on the same page again, that we're all talking about the same thing in different situations so that we know that everybody's together and that we want the research to go together. Like Emily said, we're here for you to help you with the science, but you have to help us tell if it's really on that project, because we don't know if it fits that project, but that's where you do know your science and you do know your projects and what fits. So we're here to help you. We want to make everything as streamlined as possible. And there was the question about research enhancement. It's a year late. You get your money. If you had money in 2020, you won't get it till 22 because we have to wait for the year to close. We have to wait for the financial reports to be finalized, for the AFR for the university to be finalized, everything cleaned out that the Office of Finance does. So that money will come into your research enhancement the next fall. And that information is sent to the Office of Budget, and then they talk to the provost and different departments and how the money is then divided up. But it's generally the 10% back to the PI. And then there is also, people want to know, how long does it take to get a cost center? That's a good question. There are many different circumstances that can affect it. I've seen it where I've gotten a cost center within a day. That's generally not the case. We get a new award notification. We have to get information from the dean's office to get the new cost center information to get that set up. And then it depends sometimes how long people in the queue take to get to it. Right now it's the end of the year. It could take a little bit longer because the Office of Finance and the different areas there are working very hard to get the financial reports and the end of year stuff closed out for FY20. So that might take a little bit. Sometimes I've seen them, they're logging on at midnight working, and then that's when I'll get a new cost center approved, because that's when they have the chance to look at it. So generally, like Emily said, it's less than a week, I think, on the average. It's like 3 to 4 days, but it can take 2 weeks, and sometimes things get stuck in different departments and different offices, and so there's not a whole lot we can do about that. But so that's just a quick overview for the Office of Post-Award Management. Like I said, our main goal here is to help you, and we want to hear from you. We can email us at opm@UT-Dallas. That's where the 5 of us will see the emails come in. We pick them up, and if we can't answer it, we will find the answer for you and get back with you generally within a day. We try our best to answer you, at least let you know that we're working on it. Thanks. Are there questions, Tiffany?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. The first question is, why is the cost transfer policy limited to 90 days?
Cost center policy the cost transfer policy for 90 days is general business process. That is generally what the federal circulars and all the grant policies have agreed to. They like the 90 days. They think that that's within a reasonable amount of time for charges to be recognized where they should be, and that is the policy that the university adheres to as well.
Thank you, Cindy. All right, the next question is, how does the timing of the computing device purchase affect whether or not it is considered essential and allocable?
The timing is very important when you purchase new equipment. Computing devices purchased early on are generally just not scrutinized, not looked at, but recent audits have found that computers and different big items like that bought towards the end of a project are going to be looked at very closely, and sometimes they can be kicked back from the sponsor and said, no, we're not going to cover that. Now, you can buy a computer within the last month. If your computer has died, you have to have it to process your year-end reports or the last bit of your data. But one thing that we never want to see on a requisition, a justification of any sort, is to spend down funds. That's an automatic denial by our office. If you say this for that purpose, it's going to be kicked back immediately. We cannot approve anything to spend down funds. It has to be a reasonable expense on that project.
Thank you, Cindy. I have additional questions in the queue. The next question is, a contract has been in negotiation for 5 months and the project has now been set up. Work started and costs were charged to our department funding. Can I now transfer our 5 months of salary expense to the new project?
Absolutely. This is an allowable expense. The expenses are going to go, the project's going to go back for several months, and then we will be allowed to put those expenses on the project at that point. This is an exception to the 90-day policy because of the timing of the project. There's usually some reason that, the sponsor held it up, something happened, but on our side. So if the project is just now being set up that was effective back 90 days or 5 months or even 11 months ago, we will still let the expenses be moved to that project. Yes.
Thank you, Cindy. An additional question in the queue, is there a standard procedure with your office for annual reports? For example, how close to deadline should we contact you to pull numbers?
Well, I think we don't have hard, fast dates. It's going to be depending on the project dates. I know Emily works closely with the renewals or the no-cost extensions, and they generally contact us to get that information. I think you need to be working on it within the last probably 5 to 6 months. I'm not sure exactly on that one. That would be more of an Emily answer probably for us.
As far as reporting goes, so if we have a kickoff meeting, we'll talk about when your reports are due, and if you have a federal project, the dates are pretty standard. If it's from a company or a foundation, those dates may differ, but we use PeopleSoft to send out reminders of when reports are due. Now, we're limited in the character count in PeopleSoft, so it does look like spam, but I promise it's not. It's from me. But it does state that your whether it's an annual or a final report is due on this date, and it'll list your cost center and your project ID and the title. And we will work with you at that point. I tend to send that out about 2 weeks prior to when the progress report is due. I found that if I send it out too early, then no one really does anything with it because we're natural procrastinators. Some of the federal sponsors will send out reminders about a month before, but keep in mind that most of the times that a progress report is due, that means it's due and the PO has to have approved it. And most people tend to submit it on the day it's due, which means it's late because the program officer has not approved it. For NSF, that is definitely the case. They will sometimes send you a nastygram stating you submitted it on the day it was due and I didn't have time to review it for my piece. For NIH, we actually submit the progress reports. They have to go through my office, and it's very important on NIH that we get the correct numbers from Cindy's group to make sure that we're meeting that unobligated balance. And so we will actually be the contact that will work with OPM and you to make sure that that number is met. So I mean, you should work on your progress report all along and have it in your mind what you're doing. How long it takes you to write it is probably a personal preference, but we will send out a reminder about 2 weeks before that you have one due. And then if you need help, you can reach out to my group and sponsor projects and we'll help you with that.
Thank you, Emily and Cindy. And I have one more question in the queue. It's, who do I contact for a budget revision and or a no-cost extension?
Well, the budget revision would be the post-award management. We also have the online process that we would prefer that you use. That's out there in the award management tab, that how to use that. And if you need the information for that, we would be glad to send it to you. Contacting opm@utdallas.edu. No cost extension. I'm going to hand off to Emily.
Yes, no cost extensions would go through my group. You will get the reminder from OPM that your project is ending, and at that point it's either going to end or you might need an extension, or even if you wanted one prior to that, you would reach out to my group, either the specialist that you're working with or OSP in general, and we would need a justification as to why you need a no cost extension. And as Cindy said, you can't just say I need to spend my money. That's not an acceptable reason. It needs to be something like I couldn't hire my postdoc because there were visa issues, or my grad student graduated and left. It took me a while to replace them. My lab flooded. The computer that I needed, the equipment didn't come in time, and so it delayed it, or my research went in a different direction and we just haven't finished yet. Any of those are acceptable, but you can't just say I need to spend my money. You also can't have a no cost extension if there is no money. There must be money remaining in order to have an extension. But you would just need to contact our office and let us know what the justification is and how long of an extension you need. The maximum would be a year, but you could just ask for a half a year if you needed it. Just keep in mind that if you only need 6 months, but you go ahead and ask for a year, you're going to have to reconcile it for the entire year. So just keep that in mind.
Emily and Cindy, thank you so much for sharing your time and valuable information with the new faculty at today's session. Attendees, please consider joining us for the next Research Compass Series event titled Conflict of Interest and Export Controls, taking place 2 weeks from today, Monday, October 5th at 12 p.m. Registration and so much more can be found at research.utdallas.edu. Thank you.